I want you to imagine something. Think of yourself as an established entrepreneur. No, you're not where you are today. You've built successful companies and you've reached all your personal and financial goals. You're successful in your eyes. So how did you get there? Was it through building businesses, through building franchises, or did you start your own companies thinking of your own business ideas? Well, in today's video, I want to go over the pros and cons to franchising versus starting your own business. As a new entrepreneur, there's so much information out there, whether you should buy a franchise and start off running that way, or whether you should start your own business and build something from the ground up. And there are pros and cons to both we're going to go over here today. So let's jump in. So to start, I'm going to be going over the pros of starting your own business. I myself believe that you should start your own business instead of choosing a franchise, as there are many pros that will benefit you down the road. So the first one I want to talk about is having complete control. When you start your own business, it allows you to have complete control over literally every single detail, from the product and service offering, to the processes involved, to the management of those processes and the products and services, to how you manage your employees, to the hiring, the marketing, and what you want to do with your revenue and how you want to move your business forward. See, one of the cons compared to starting your own business for franchising is that you lose some of this control, especially over your revenue. When you purchase into a franchise, you must submit a percentage of your revenue towards the company that you bought the franchise from. That's how they ultimately make money. Also, you give up control of some of the procedures as well as the product and service. When you own a franchise, you don't get to dictate what kind of products and services are offered and when those changes are made. The franchise owner and the head company will be dictating new product offerings, new service offerings, and if any existing products and services will change. So a downside to this is if you see a lot of customers coming in and they're having problems with these products or services, or problems with the procedures put in place by the franchise, you don't really have much control to be able to change these processes, as you're stuck to the guidelines and rules bound by the franchise. But when you start your own business, you get to control these minor details that you wouldn't necessarily get to control with a franchise. So for instance, if you see a disgruntled customer over and over again, you can look at the process or product or service or area you need to change, and you can make those according changes right away. No need for someone else's approval or even submitting the idea just for feedback. You get complete control over everything in your business. Another pro for starting your own business is the ability for exponential growth. You see, when you buy into a franchise, you're usually buying into a sustainable business model, one that has been proven and one that can generate profits. However, it does sound nice that you're buying into a business that can generate profits, but generally when you buy into a franchise, you're not going to see that exponential growth that's possible when you start your own business. For example, if you were to buy a McDonald's franchise and locate it in a certain area with high foot traffic, you may be able to generate a certain amount of income each month. And that could be great. It could be enough for you to be a full-time entrepreneur and just run the franchise. However, if you're looking to make those millions and you want to grow that business into $1 billion company, you're going to have a hard time doing that with a franchise. You see, when you start your own business, you're able to build that customer base and continue to grow it. And there's that room and chance for that scalability and for that exponential growth. We looked at McDonald's from the franchise side, but if you compare it to starting your own business and look at something like Slack or Facebook or any of the other big tech companies, you can see that they had massive and exponential growth, and not because they own a franchise. The third pro to starting your own business is you get to develop more entrepreneurial skills. You see, if you buy into a franchise, although you do get the skills of operating and running a business, you miss out on a lot of areas such as the business idea validation, the brainstorming in the first place, bringing that idea to market, and maybe even getting your first few customers and changing your business model and changing the way you operate business. You see, when you buy into a franchise, you don't get that opportunity, but you do when you start your own business. So one of the first and one of the most valuable skills you can learn as a new entrepreneur starting your own business is how to validate the business idea. When you buy into a franchise, you miss out on this opportunity to look and validate that idea in the marketplace, as it already usually is validated. The second skill you're going to learn is how to find and target your target audience. Now, when you buy into a franchise, they'll already have all the marketing departments set up, and they'll tell you what their key customer is if you already don't know. But when you start your own business idea, there's a lot of ambiguity around who that key customer is and who that target market is going to be. So when you start your own business, you get to test this and you get to develop your skills around learning that. And that's an invaluable skill as you move forward and start other businesses as an entrepreneur. The third skill you get when choosing your own business is that you get to choose a business model that's right for you. When you buy into a franchise, the business model is already set up. They already have something you can just plug in and play. But when you start your own business, it's up to you to decide on the business model. Are you going to be a subscription service? Are you going to be doing wholesaling? Is it going to be an online-based business, etc.? There are so many questions around the business model that need to be answered, and learning how to develop those answers for the business model to fit your goals, lifestyle, and the business idea you have is a very, very useful skill as a new entrepreneur. Especially after you've developed your first business and are looking to develop your second or third. Once it comes to the business model, you can fully understand how you're going to be bringing that value to market, which is an invaluable skill. The fourth benefit for starting your own business is that you have more control over the startup costs, and these usually can be potentially lower. You see, when you start your own business, you're able to dictate what startup costs you want to include. You're also able to dictate a business idea that fits your goals and lifestyle, so the startup costs match your resources you have available. For instance, if you don't have much money and you look to a franchise, you may have to even look out to take a loan due to the potential high startup costs of usually around $50,000 to even $200,000 to buy into a franchise. Whether if you look at starting your own business, you can control the resources more. So for instance, if you don't have that much money, you can look to start an online business, and you can look to run that business using your own skills and strengths. So you don't need to hire anyone, you don't need to worry about any overhead, and you can begin running the business from your home. So as you can see, the startup costs can be so much lower if you choose to start your own business versus going into a franchise. One thing to note here though, is that you can lose control of your startup costs. For instance, a franchise will have a set fee such as $50,000 to $100,000 to buy and set up the franchise. These numbers are pretty accurate as they've been able to replicate this across many different markets in many other different locations with the franchises. However, when you start your own business, startup costs can easily start getting very high if you don't watch yourself. For instance, you can be buying a lot of equipment to do certain things, or you can just get carried away with spending your money on marketing that you didn't really need to spend, etc. But if you are careful with your startup costs and the resources for starting a business are more in line with doing a low-cost startup, then you can see how starting your own business would be much more beneficial here. The fifth and final pro I want to go over for starting your own business versus a franchise is that you have the ability to franchise your startup down the road. So if your startup and own business becomes a huge success and you've built it to a model where you can franchise, you could even franchise it yourself and become the people that sit at the headquarters and dictate how much revenue is going to be coming back to you and what kind of products and services and offering changes will be made. So now that we've gone over the pros of starting your own business versus a franchise, I want to go over the pros of starting a franchise. Now, I don't want to completely discredit a franchise based on the pros I suggested earlier, because buying into a franchise can be an amazing way to run a business, and it can be an even greater way to earn an income as an entrepreneur. There are so many different aspects of running a franchise versus starting your own business, and it can really help you develop business skills and learn the processes without having to worry about those HR practices, the marketing practices, and some of the operational and product development practices as well. So the first pro I want to touch on is that everything's already set up. When you buy into a franchise, everything from the procedures of the operations to how you're going to serve the product or service, to how the customers are going to receive that value and how you receive the customer's value in return, as well as the type of location you need, the type of ingredients and suppliers you're going to need to interact with. All those nitty-gritty details are taken care of. The person who develops the franchise has all those answers for you. And really, so when you buy into a franchise, you're buying in to have all those answers and to be able to move forward right away. So when you pay for those initial build and startup costs and franchise buy-in fees, you're building something that's already come set up. You see, when you start your own business, you're going to be building out all these processes yourself. And that can take a significant amount of time if you're doing that alone. For instance, if you're looking to hire someone down the road, the practices from the franchise will already have a procedure outlined that you can easily follow. But you're gonna have to develop your own procedure if you have your own business. Similarly, if you're tracking of any of your finances or operations in the franchise, the headquarters of the franchise should have the materials necessary to help you do so. So you're not creating all these spreadsheets and operational procedures yourself like you would be when starting your own business. The second, and one of the most considerable pros to starting a franchise versus your own business, is that the idea is already validated. Now, one of the major reasons new and aspiring entrepreneurs fail is because they do not validate their business idea in the marketplace properly, and they don't know how to execute after that. I get so many emails almost daily about how do I know if this is a good idea to launch? When should I move forward with my business idea? How do I choose a business idea that I know will work in the market? Well, that all has to do with business idea validation, which is the next step after your brainstorming in your business idea. But with a franchise, the idea is already validated. If you're not opening the first franchise, there are usually multiple locations of the franchise that have been opened previously, and even a main flagship store that's already been opened, that have proven that the idea has been validated, that customers are willing to pay a certain amount of money in order to receive the product or service in return. So validating a business idea, if you're starting your own business, can be a big undertaking, as you have to do a lot of interviewing, you may even have to adjust your business model, etc. But buying into a franchise, this is all done for you. You can rest assured that when you open the doors, if the marketing is done properly, then people are going to come, because this product or service has already been shown to be in demand. The third pro to buying into a franchise is you'll have potentially less risk involved. You see, when you already know the startup costs involved, as well as the potential market, and the idea has already been validated, you're able to reduce the risk that you're going to lose and your business is going to fail. For instance, you could potentially map out how much the startup cost will be and what will be your projected revenue based on all the other franchises out there. This could give you an accurate timeline and picture of when you'll reach profitability or when you may have to shut the doors. Typically, this isn't an issue for franchises, as the headquarter franchise, the people you work with, really want to make sure that business is profitable, as it ultimately looks bad upon them if a franchise is closed down. So there can be reduced risk if you buy into a franchise rather than start your own business. Another reason there is reduced risk is that if you compare it to a business idea that hasn't been started, there's no guarantee that it will work. But with a franchise, it's been replicated in multiple different areas. There are many different pros and cons to starting your own business versus buying into a franchise. And this assessment will really depend on your own scenario and how you want your entrepreneurial journey to play out. For instance, if you don't have $100,000 to buy into a franchise, you may want to stick the route of developing your own business idea so you can develop something that's low cost and possibly something you start on the side while you work full time. So if you're looking for custom exercises and in-depth guides on how you can develop your own startup business ideas, you should check out the Finding the Fit ebook. This is an original ebook I've written to help you, the new and aspiring entrepreneur, develop that first business idea to launch.